Yeah. So what does IRMA mean to you? We go one by one.
IRMA was my doorway to this whole development sector. Otherwise, I was an urban, middle class, come from urban middle class family who, other than read newspapers and stuff like that, had no real exposure to rural India itself, which at that point in time in 1980 was certainly much bigger and much more dominant than today. The life was very important there. So yeah, it was the doorway. Without that, I would not have got an entry into this. I didn't have any background or any idea or any possibility to do what I'm doing.
So I think a little similar to Vivek, I think IRMA actually broadened my vision, made me really understand my own country much better. I think it was my first stint when I went to a village in Uttar Pradesh for my field work, and we had to stay there for a good 2 months. It was deep winter. And I think that was my first experience with issues of caste, of gender, very strong. And I really realized that if we have to make any difference, even a small difference, perhaps this is what we really need to do. So, so I think it really widened my vision, made me understand things much better. And in fact, I remember coming back, and I think it was to one of our professors, I don't know whether it was Raja, saying that we come back changed. We come back so much more sensitive. I'd sit down and talk to the people at the mess, ask them where they'd come from and all. I never bothered before that. So I think IRMA actually built that sensitivity, that empathy, which I'm really happy to say I've carried through all these years. So, that very strong grounding IRMA gave me, I wouldn't have been the person I am if it wasn't for those 2 years at IRMA. I remember when I started work and I was living in a very difficult part of Rajasthan, where there was no electricity, no water. And my father came to meet me and he said, I understand this, but your mom will never understand the kind of work that you do. And my father used to go with me to the villages and see that work. But my mom always used to ask me, when you go gaon mein jate ho to karte kya ho tum? क्या बात करते हो तुम तो खुद ही नहीं इतना जानती क्या बात करते हो and it was much later that I was able to really bring to my mother the kind of work that I did when she interacted with some of the people whose lives some of my work had changed. So I think IRMA, as Vivek said, really gave us that strength that we can be change agents. I wouldn't have had that confidence if it wasn't for those 2 years at IRMA.
Yeah, not very different for me also, I guess. But just to paraphrase it slightly differently, it gave me a mission and the means. The mission as in, I strongly believe market should be made to work for the poor. So that's what I have been on as a journey since then, and it'll go on. And the means, as in, I even before IRMA, and that's what fascinated me and how I came, was also the belief that there is a power in and there is a tyranny in R. So the power of fusion. So it was until IRMA happened that whole discipline was conceived. It was business management and rural development. And rural management came into being while that discovery goes on as to what it means and all that. But the power of fusion in terms of how do you integrate many things in life, in business, in markets and social, whatever aspect. I think that's the formula for innovation. Formal, informal economy, any which way you take, so long as you think this or that, there's a tyranny in that thinking. The trade-off really doesn't get you anywhere. But the minute you think that, they can be blended, they can be fusion, and possibly that's where there is a solution. And so that's the means. So it gave both the mission and means to me.